We ready? All right, welcome everybody to the Lake Bluff School District 65 Board of Education meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:01 PM. Lauren, can I have a roll call, please?
Ann Hill.
Here.
Carrie Steinbach. Here. Lauren Hirsch. Here. Laura Breakstone. Here. Amy Connell Donahue.
Here.
All right, let's stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, tonight, would anyone like to volunteer to read the mission, vision, and motto?
I can do it.
Wonderful. Would you like to look at my computer?
I got it. Our mission is to ensure academic achievement and personal growth for all students through innovative and engaging educational opportunities. Vision, an inclusive community of motivated learners who are inspired to change the world through exploration and collaboration. And our motto is excellence in education, enthusiasm for life, every student, every day.
Thanks, Lauren. Okay, now, public comment. We welcome comments from our staff, parents, and constituents. The board president, me, will determine the format and ground rules for comments in the best interest of the audience and the agenda. Do we have anyone here who would like to make public comment or anything online? All right, we'll have an opportunity at the end again if anyone decides they do. We always do an addition of discussion item as well. So we'll begin the rest of our meeting with this regular agenda item. Do any board members have a topic that they would like to bring forward to have discussed at a future meeting? Well, if anything comes up, you can always do that at the meeting or let us know. Okay, discussion and presentations. We'll begin our discussions and presentations for the evening then, starting with Teacher Institute Days and Professional Development, and Tracy and Jackie, please.
I'm gonna show you something. Trying to share. Okay. Perfect.
All right. So we're going to give a little overview of how our Institute Days went in August when we welcomed staff back into the building, and kind of long-term professional development update for the school year.
All right, when we think about preparing for the start of the school year, we really are thinking about our strategic plan and working on goals 1 and 2. So making sure that all of our students have educational programming that aligns with their own needs for their academic achievement, and creating those learning environments that are engaging, safe, and positive, and that our teachers, all of our other staff members, and our buildings are ready to go and ready for students to come on those first days of school.
So this year, a little shift from previous years is we had 3 days of Institute Days or in-service days before students arrived. Previously, we've only had 2. This allowed for more teacher time and team time that was more self-directed. So time in classrooms, time to work with teams to talk about curriculum in the first days of school. It also allowed for more paraprofessional involvement. There's some specific trainings that they usually do during those early Institute Days, but because we had the extra day added, it allowed for the paraprofessionals to be a part of more of our full staff development, which really provided some significant support and inclusion for our staff as a whole. And then our district-wide professional development during those first 3 days included a volunteer keynote, Jim Morey, who Joe Jackson was able to connect us with, who gave us a little bit of an overview of a problem-solving process that some of our teams have continued to utilize. We did a pretty robust introduction to inclusive schools that was pretty similar to the same structure that we had in the summer at the board retreat. And then the ruler team also did a pretty significant 2-hour session with staff members talking about how we could continue to work on the ruler strategies of social emotional learning as a staff and what it will look like as we move forward. And then also there were personalized session based on needs. So that included talking about AIMSWeb and the kindergarten and first grade teams. It included talking about our Bridges third edition that we are transitioning to for the kindergarten through fifth grade teams. At the middle school level, there was some Schoology professional development. So it was really catered towards whatever staff members had as a specific need at that time.
We do survey our staff members at the end of these institute days to get their feedback on what they thought about the professional development opportunities. So as we are really focusing in on inclusive schools work and ruler work, we had a lot of positive feedback on both of those. People are excited to learn more. People want more strategies, both in the inclusive schools work when they're working with students and with ruler. Both of these both of the work in these areas will continue with staff professional development throughout this year. And people are excited to have that professional development happening.
So just to give a little bit more of an overview of what the year will look like ahead. One of the big pieces of feedback that we received in the spring, you can see the little graph we have here. I believe I have enough professional development to support all schools. So while we do have a really large portion of people agreeing, we would really like to see these numbers of, you can see that neither agree or disagree, and disagree is over like just about 50%. So we would like to see that number increase where people really feel like they have the professional development to support all of the students' needs that they have within a classroom. So some of the things we have planned for this year include our release time, which will begin for first through fifth grade, the week of September 30th, and then kindergarten will be rolled into that after winter break. That will provide everyone with 90 minutes of team time a week to really focus on our guaranteed viable transparent curriculum. And then also embedded within that will be some inclusive schools professional development, which will overlay how we can make sure that we're making opportunities for students to feel included within the classroom, within that guaranteed viable curriculum. We also have ongoing ruler professional development plan, which will be led by our internal ruler leadership team, which is a team of teachers who is that initial team that was trained through the program that will be leading the staff through some work related to ruler. And then ongoing inclusive schools professional development. Like I said, it's going to be connected with guaranteed viable transparent curriculum writing. True North will be helping us with that work as we move forward throughout the school year. And then additional professional development opportunities as needed. So we have some plans for some literacy professional development. We have some people that are going to attend the National Conference of Teaching Mathematics conferences later this month. So just some various opportunities to make sure that people are feeling supported and able to provide the students what they need in the classroom.
There's a slide for that. Does anyone have any questions?
I kind of got the gist of it, but what does ruler exactly stand for?
Sure. So ruler is part of it's permission to feel by North Brackett. And so ruler has 5 kind of pillars, and it's to recognize your emotions, to understand your emotions, then to label your emotions, then to express your emotions, and then to be able to regulate your emotions. So it's kind of a process that we're working through with staff to be able to begin to define first with staff, how we can move through kind of those 5 pieces. And then ultimately next fall, we'll be working with students on implementing those skills into the classroom.
So will this program be similar to where during advisory in the middle school, they would have
Exactly. Second step.
a topic for like once a week or something that they would focus on?
The teaching portion, yes. Ideally, the way ruler works is you have some direct teaching, but really then it should be kind of woven throughout your day because we feel feelings all the time. And so teachers really should gain that deep understanding themselves so that they're able to interact with the content all the time.
The goal is to kind of give teachers and then ultimately students language to be able to talk about and recognize feelings, and include some tools and strategies for when they're when something needs to be addressed, that people are able to work through those emotions.
So, do you have like this survey, came back with, I don't know, 36% that disagreed. So
do you have a goal for where you would like to, that disagree area, you think, extra time that you're giving the teachers and whatnot will decrease that to?
We haven't set a specific goal, but we could talk about setting a specific goal targeted towards that specific question.
And it's hard to,
Increase, but we haven't.
Yeah, I mean, over time.
I mean, you want it to be zero.
Like,
but-
oh, people could feel like they've received the professional development they need and feel comfortable and able to work with all students in the district, and so, we would definitely want to see some big jumps over this year, especially because we have such significant plans and time being invested into professional development.
So significant improvement.
Do you know what sections that the people disagree want to focus on in professional development, or is it, like, was it specifically asked, like, what are you missing? Or,
This survey was specifically about inclusive schools. So I think that just making sure that we're targeting, professional development around people feeling like they're able to differentiate to the needs in their
that
classroom.
makes sense.
So, for example, we're doing a literacy professional development opportunity later this month, and we kind of put it out to teachers, like, who's interested? So seeing who's responding and then digging a little bit more. So I've been having some discussions with teachers about what is it that we're looking for? Can we find other opportunities that meet that same need? So we're kind of digging into that as we go.
And then some of the comments within the survey also gave us some ideas about what people are really wanting more of. So we read things such as wanting to truly understand what does inclusive schools mean for us in our district and really defining that through our work. Strategies. We heard a lot about, okay, what do I do with students? What do I do in my classroom? So we'll spend a lot of time talking about strategies and implementation with students. And we heard some about things like accommodations, modifications. What do those mean and how are we really utilizing them? And so we're doing some work in that area as well. So really through the comments, we were able to kind of pull out some of the things people were wanting to learn more about.
And then you had said there's a part where, student or teachers can go on to get more professional development as needed. Is that something where, administration decides, like, these teachers should go to the math conference, or do teachers come and ask to be sent things? So to speak?
Combination. So there are times where teachers do say, like, I found this speaker that I've always wanted to see, or there's this conference I really want to attend. And so we go through the process of, like, what that would look like, how would you share that information with your colleagues? There are other times where, like I said, there's one that's coming up later this month where we literally put it out to the elementary school who would like to attend this, and we had a lot of people that were interested. So then that told us we need to find other similar opportunities. So really, there's a mix of it. There are other times where it's like, we're targeting people like, hey, this looks like something that really fits in with some of your goals or some of the things that you are working with in your classroom. So definitely a blended mix of all of those approaches.
Okay. Anything else?
The 3 days were really well organized.
They were-
You guys did a great job.
That was my final question.
And staff
Did
was
they
really happy to
appreciate
have that 3 days.
Yes.
I think it allowed for people to feel much more settled when students came back in the classroom.
I think I
would say
had-
the overall.
Great.
Yeah, more than one person, just unsolicited, came up and said, thank you so much. The 3 days was great. The
Oh,
people
good.
felt really prepared, much more ready to start the year, and that was very much appreciated.
We always have a lot we need to do with
Yeah.
staff, and it didn't feel quite
So
so tight in getting all of it in.
And the other benefit is we have more continuity in instruction in February because we will not have that extra day off for kids. So it's a win-win, which is great.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, next up, we've got Kevin, summer fall tech update. Tech in action, right?
I was just gonna say, if we can't do it, nobody will be able
Well, I was saying it's the new 6th grade iPad.
Sixth grade iPad, yes. So summer's always a really busy time for us. We get about 8 weeks to do a lot of work. But as I kind of started putting this together, I wanted to focus more on holistically where we've come in last year. You've seen a lot of public facing, a lot of very forward facing things we've done, the clocks, the Apple TVs, the computers we replaced, the iPads. And so there's a lot of things that have gone on behind the scenes that we haven't necessarily talked about. and some of the improvements we've made that seem to set us up much more long-term and are starting to build a road for down the line, much more outside of just a year. So, the first two kind of timeframes that I put together, you've heard a lot about. I've talked about those in the past, so I'll just kind of touch on them really fast. When we came in the summer to the fall, we did a lot of the more urgent needs that the district had. The website was a project that was already in place when I got here. Phone system was one that we knew needed to be replaced, and there were some other very urgent kind of changes that we had to make to get the district in a better spot. Over the fall, we turned more focus to getting some systems better automated, better connected, getting a lot of our student systems just running better and a lot less manual touching on our part of getting things up and going. We implemented an inventory system, which we were in dire need of. So now we know where all our devices are at any given time. And then we started outdating some of that hardware, some of the computers, some of the staff computers, the computers upstairs, the middle school, some of the things like that. The 3 points I want to focus on most are the bottom three, which again, I really haven't talked about a ton, but are really important to everything, the operation of the district and how well it can operate on a day-to-day basis. So starting in October through the spring, we focused a lot on kind of the back end of the network and getting it kind of up to date, but about halfway where we want to be and where we're going to go. We'll see where we want to go later. But pre-December, we had a pretty slow internet connection, substandard by other districts. And then we had no power backup. So if we lost power in the district, everything went down. And so we had to kind of address that. Network segmentation is a difficult one to explain, but the best way I can describe it is in a network, you want to have certain devices that have access to certain systems on the back end. And so your staff devices generally have access to almost everything. Student devices have a little bit less. And then if you have a guest network, it has access to almost nothing within the district system. So that's important to set up as you start enabling guest networks or letting outside people connect to your internet. And then lastly, we had ICN Internet, if you're not familiar. It's a conglomerate that offers free or E-ratable internet to every school district in the state, essentially. Most school districts take advantage of it, and they offer various speeds for your needs, depending on your school district size. We had it in place, but we weren't utilizing it. It hadn't been hooked up yet. And so pre-December, that was something we were really focusing on doing. After December, we ended up hooking that up, and it all ran into the elementary school, and I'll talk more about that a little bit later, but both of our internet connections now run into the elementary school, and we have some redundancy in the event that one of them goes down, the other one can pick up and allow us to continue operating as though nothing happened. We installed battery UPSs last year that now give us about a 20 to 30 minute lifespan if the power would happen to go out during the day. Door locks, cameras, phones, clocks, announcements are all on that stuff now, so kind of want to make sure that we have that available if we need to. And then the last 2 points, we started really updating some of our outdated end of life equipment that was in need to be. So everything is pretty up to date now, and we can start to develop a life cycle for all of our network equipment, which we couldn't necessarily do last year as we were trying to get all that stuff updated and retired. So the next point we did was from spring to summer of last year, we focused more on kind of cybersecurity, more on putting together some more robust standards for managing our devices, managing our accounts. And in February, I did a assessment with our third-party cybersecurity consultant. And what they do is they have a 46-question document, an interview that they do with you. It's a very standard interview that they do with every district or organization. And based off the answers you have in that, they give you a grade of how prepared you are, how well you are for preventing cybersecurity intrusions, that type of thing. And so we scored a D at the time, and so we had a little bit of work to do.
Scored A.
Yeah. There's no good way to write that. It's a D. So
Not standard based.
we had some work to do. Thankfully, a lot of the stuff that we could do was stuff that could be obtained pretty quickly just by adjusting some of the processes, some things we have in the set we're putting in place over the summer. So you'll hear me mention Mosel a lot, and that's a system that allows us to manage our Apple devices on the back end. And so by implementing and switching all of our devices to that system, it gave us a lot more capability than we've had before. And it also brings a lot of systems that we had in 3 or 4 places into one. So gives us a lot more, easier access, but also just a lot more visibility to all of our stuff. So this is, the top row is what they ask and kind of what they're looking for. And then the bottom row in the blue is what they're recommending that we do. And so inventory, we were in the process of putting it in last year, and we're about 90% implemented at this point. So that grade would go up. The next 2 points, they recommended that none of our devices, nobody has admin access on their devices to install or put whatever they want on them. And so that was an easy one. As we transitioned people to Mosel, we were able to kind of remove that, right? And people can still get it, but it takes a little bit more of a process to have it done. Mosel also has a backend that looks at anything that anyone downloads or attempts to put on their device, and if it sees it as potentially harmful, it automatically removes it, puts it in like a locked folder, and then notifies us to know that there's something there. We can either delete it off their device or reinstate it if it seems safe. A really nice one, which was one of our lowest scores, was documentation on how we're preventing things. Mosel also has a backend of, it pulls in all like security standards that are recommended nationally, and it kind of breaks them down based off of how you can implement them on device. Mosel allows us to pull all those in and then automatically just say, yes, we want to implement this. And it automatically creates like a protocol and pushes it out to all of our devices. So now we have a list of about 40 policies that we're pushing down, so we can show that we're doing what we should be doing to meet those standards. And then this one is doesn't necessarily do a whole lot if you're just looking at it, but none of our hard drives were considered encrypted, and that's pretty big for cybersecurity at a basic level. So if anyone's device got stolen or lost, it was pretty easy to get into the hard drive. So now we've done encryption on all of our hard drives, so that way we're making sure that we're doing the best we can to try and eliminate that vulnerability. And the last 3, again, just some of the standards that we're looking at. One that I'll touch on is locking workstations. This was a tough one with some of the staff because it was an adjustment, but we now automatically lock all the computers and iPads if they're inactive for a certain amount of time, and then they log out if they're left for even longer. So it was a little bit of an adjustment, but we got there, and everyone's okay.
We're all okay.
Well, it was a little.
Yeah, we will.
We'll be all right. It was just an adjustment. On the side of devices, we wanted to start kind of familiarizing our students with cybersecurity and what it means to be secure as you start kind of growing up in the adult world. And so an easy one for us was passwords. Students in the past, we had their password, we set it for them. The teachers knew what it was, and so we've changed that. We now set their password. They come in the first few days of school. We force a reset on them, and then they own their password. So, and then we have a specific set of requirements that they have to follow. So that was just an easy one for us to start kind of educating them on the importance of that. And then on top of that, as we rolled out our 6th grade iPads, we also enforced passcodes or fingerprints to unlock the iPads. So again, just another added layer that they kind of start to have to follow as they move up in the world.
Are all grade levels choosing their own password?
Yes. Oh, no, middle school. We're starting in 6th grade.
Kindergarten.
It's so important because my kids always, when they want to sign up for something, they're like, "Hey, what's the password?" I'm like, no, you have to create your own. And they're like, "Sure, what is it?" I'm like, no, like I don't understand the concept. So I think it's really cool that they started from scratch.
Yeah.
We'll see how sixth grade goes. I could see possibly going to 5th, but 6th grade was a challenge this year, so we'll see. We'll see if it gets easier as we move along in the next couple of years here. One of the things we also did in the spring was really kind of look at our subscriptions. We try to constantly do this, but spring is a good time. Most of our subscriptions renew in July, so that gives us an opportunity to look at usage and where we can kind of subsidize and bring things together. As I've already mentioned, Mosel, we were able to take some of our subscriptions and start moving them into Mosel, so that eliminated costs for us that we were paying. Additionally, as we start to possibly transition to iPads, there's another subscription that's pretty large for us that if we can move to iPads, that subscription would go away completely. And that would really help us kind of get some of that budget back. Another platform, ThrillShare, is our website. It offers a lot of communication as well as newsletters. So we've started utilizing that platform within Thrillshare, so our newsletters from the district are coming from Thrillshare now. That allowed us to regain a little bit of capital there, and then also our communication, our overall district communication is starting to come from Thrillshare. So over the next 18 months, we'll transition away from what we pay for a school messenger right now, so that'll help us regain a little bit as well. 2 subscriptions we did add this year were Schoology and one called Clever IDM. Schoology is a learning management system at the middle school. The kids all use it at Lake Forest when they go over there, so we thought this was a good opportunity to get them exposure to it here, and then as they go to Lake Forest, it's a little bit easier to transition for them as they move into high school. Clever IDM is a back-end thing for technology. We didn't really have a good process for creating staff accounts or student accounts when they came into the district and registered or when they moved between schools. It was a pretty arduous process. So now our registrar, Andrea, as students register new, as new staff are onboarded, she puts them into PowerSchool. They sync within 2 hours and they get their account, everything's up and running. So it's much more hands-off on our end and a lot easier and seamless in how it operates. The last piece is where we see ourselves going post all these changes. There's been a lot of changes made. I'm sure there's been a lot of times where I think I even look and I'm like, I don't know, hopefully I know where we're going, but I don't know. But I think we're starting to see more concrete, like this is where we want to go. This is where we see ourselves going in the next couple of years. iPads was a big one this year. That was a big change with our 6th grade students, and we've seen some immediate benefits from it. With Mosul, that brings all our management into one and cuts out 3 other platforms that we're paying for. So it gives us a little bit more, even though the iPads are a little bit more cost up front, we get a little bit more of return as we're not paying for these subscriptions, which we don't really gain a physical products from. With iPads, you get free classroom management for teachers. That's a paid service right now with the Chromebooks. Apple gives that to you free with the iPads. That's another savings for us. Parent management, we just rolled out last night. We sent out the communication to parents. That was never an easy task with Chromebooks. I mean, the technology's on to set up. It's pretty simple with the iPads, so we were able to roll that out and offer parents the ability to manage the iPads outside of the school day. And then one of the hopes we're hoping to see is creativity in the classroom, just see more come out with the iPads in the classrooms over the Chromebooks. There's a lot more capability with the iPads in terms of creation and innovation. So we're hoping to see a little bit more of that. And then durability and resale, we've already I already touched on, but we're hoping that with iPads, we get some more durability and we get resale out of them rather than paying for subscriptions that we don't really get out of anything out of it, using them. You can see at the bottom, the initial proposal was for 110 iPads and 2-year warranty. We went back and worked with Apple in April. We had to get 120 because of increased enrollment. And we were able to get 120 plus increase our warranty by 2 years for about $300. So we ended up paying almost the same amount to increase by 10, increase 2 years of full coverage of warranty. So it was a really nice perk for us as we went back to purchase them. As I mentioned, we've done a lot of work on the back end of the network. We've gotten about halfway to where I want us to go, and we're hoping in the next year we go even further with getting ourselves set up for the future. Right now, both of our internet connections run into Lake Bluff, the elementary, and that's great. That's good unless elementary loses power or something happens over there. Then everything over here gets cut off as well. And so in terms of a modern network, that's not really where you want to be. You want to have redundancy built in. So our hope is in the next year, we've already put in to have ICM install a second internet line coming in here. And so we'll essentially quadruple our speed from where we are now and have separate internet connections going to each building, but allowing them to talk to each other. So if one goes out, the other one can pick up and continue operating and feeding the other building. So that's our hope. Additionally, we pay for that second internet connection with Net 56 right now, our networking vendor, and we're looking to cut that out and recoup some of that cost and possibly put in our own managed equipment. And we're also starting to evaluate our future with them as we've just seen some differences in how things should be done or we'd like them done. So it's where we're heading, looking to head with the network. We reinstated a technology committee here to get more teachers involved in just the output and the outlook of technology as a whole, mostly on the classroom instructional side. And we're working, one of our other lowest scoring points on that cyber assessment was the response plan. We don't have a response plan in the event of an intrusion or something happens right now. So we're working on starting to develop a response plan of what that looks like, should something happen. And then network redundancy, I've already kind of touched on, we're looking to really increase our redundancy and just continue moving forward and getting ourselves a little more future proof.
In the past, board members have been a part of the tech committee, and I think we're open, if there are any, one or two board members that would like to attend technology committee, if you could let Kevin know, that would be great.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, I'm not volunteering, I have a question. I will volunteer, but, do you make house calls and do this? Side hustle, personal house. Was there ever a consideration, maybe, with all the changes and just as a parent, maybe teaching some of the parents, like what we're doing here for the kids and why their iPads look like they do, or their Chromebooks, like why do they log into Clever? Things like that, or just even deeper about like what parents might be needing when it comes to safety on their devices. I just feel like it would be probably helpful.
Like an
Plus-
info session?
Yes. Yeah, because we used to do like.
In my other district, I used to do a parent night every year. I wanted to do it regularly, my time got away from me, so.
Yeah,
And
Oh, I think it
that
would be
night's pretty
its
tight
own-
anyways, it didn't
Yeah.
have one offer, but I would certainly
I
be
think
willing.
you'd be surprised at how many people are interested because it's been a really long time since I sat and listened. I mean, it's Miss Brown.
Yeah.
And she would explain, like, here's how you turn it on, and that was about it. So it would be really beneficial.
Well, even for that parent management, I mean, I got that email, which was awesome, but there might be some that aren't comfortable. Feel like they don't want to mess anything up, so maybe they feel more comfortable bringing the
Sure,
device to the meeting and have be walked through it. Yeah.
sure.
I just have to say, it feels like you haven't been here that long, and this is a lot. So that's awesome. Thank you. It's really,
Confidence over the busiest people in the.
I know. Tell her we said thank you.
yeah, but it's really much needed and feels like all positive. Headed in the right direction stuff to me, so.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Is the cyber, are we gonna have that company come back in and regrade us so that, I'm not, I like, I'd like to see it, so that we can end on being like, well, here's how we started.
Yes.
Here's how we are now.
We know what kind of student you are. Retake.
Yes, absolutely. So they're actually, I'm starting tomorrow with them. I'm working on a response plan.
Okay,
And then I anticipate probably once I complete that, I'll redo the assessment because I'd like to have that checked off. But
yeah, I mean, even if it was like this same time next year, so that we
Yeah.
could say like,
yeah, it's,
we have
it's kind of, I will
here's where we are.
definitely, we consult with them. I can't remember, we did like 12 hours, I think, with them. So we'll look to have them.
okay,
Assess.
great, thank you.
Remind me who else is using iPads, sixth grade and anyone else?
Sixth grade and then pre-K, K1, I'll use them.
Okay.
They don't use them on like a personal, they're not assigned to the.
They don't
kids,
have a
but they
one-to-one
have
password. Okay. And so far, do we feel like those are, I mean, I realize it's the third week of school, but do we feel like that's been a positive change?
I've seen teachers using them. I haven't, I've tried to let them be. I've annoyed them with a lot in the
Yeah.
last year, so I've kind of let them be the first couple of weeks, but we are gonna really start kind of seeing where they are. The Apple TVs have been really positive. I've noticed teachers connecting, moving around the class a lot easier than they have in the past, so I think that's been an easy win for us, but yeah, we certainly want to start getting evaluation on the iPads.
Great.
I think just the ease of use, like at home, we have 3 Chromebooks to 1 iPad and the iPad is so much easier. So much easier.
Yeah.
For kids.
Well, yeah, I personally think Apple is easier too, but there is that nice consistency there, like, we're saying we just adopt Schoology because the high school has Schoology, and high school's also using Apple, and so it's nice to flow right into that, already understanding how it works.
So is Schoology now, for all the middle school is using
Yes.
Schoology?
Yeah, they all moved to it.
All grades, and how did that rollout go? Are they?
It's been an
We'll
adjustment,
do it.
it's been a learning process. It was a big change, but needed. It was something that teachers hadn't had in quite a while, so they all understood it was kind of a necessary change, and especially coming from a high school district that used Schoology for the last 10 years. We had 2 feeder districts that used Schoology and 1 that didn't, and it was very, very visible to kids that didn't use Schoology coming into high school, how their learning curve of not only high school, but learning to use that product. So I kind of keep that in the back of my mind as I think about our students transitioning into Lake Forest, where all those students are using school even from fifth grade on.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There's been a ton of work done, and also, like, tech is like, we all notice the air you breathe, if it's not working, if it's the only time you don't notice it. And cybersecurity doesn't make things easier, so I wanna thank Kevin and Sylvie for making it as painless as possible to get us more secure. Because that's obviously an issue for all school districts, and, it's not easy to make those transitions, so. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Actually, Ale, you're up next.
Yeah, this one's gonna be a quick one. We report, each year, the number of students we have enrolled on the sixth day of school to account for all kids getting back from vacation and things. We've decreased by 0.5% since last year, so our official number is 876 students, which is down by 4. You can see many students transitioned from the elementary to the middle school, so we had additional students at middle and less students at elementary.
Any questions?
That's like children enrolled, not children present on that day of school.
Children present that day at school.
So if they're like,
Enrolled and, yeah.
okay, so if they're like.
Oh, if they're
Not
after.
attendance, it's, okay, that's,
There's an average daily attendance too, which is a different report.
But this is actually kids enrolled.
I believe so. Is that right? Yeah.
Okay. And do you want us to move on to strategic plan update?
I will. Presentation up. And, so today we're talking high level strategic plan. Our Illinois report card or state report card does not get released to us until October 1st. Then we have it embargoed for our perusing until it gets released to the public on October 29th or 30th or 31st. It's usually around Halloween. So we will review the official Illinois report card in October. This does take into account the data from the school report card at a high level though, so that we could get our strategic plan metric going and then start talking about our action plans for the year. So again, this is just where we started in the 22-23 school year. We're officially beginning our second full year of our strategic plan. Again, just as a reminder, as a district, we believe in multiple measures for growth and achievement. So we do, our first bucket of whether or not our students are successful is whether or not whether they're meeting or exceeding standards on the Illinois Assessment of Readiness, which is the big one that they take in March 3rd through 8th grade in ELA and math. And then if they don't kind of make it in that bucket, then we look at whether or not they are achieving and growing on the math assessment, which is given 3 times a year. And we take growth from fall to spring for, again, those 3rd to 8th graders to know whether or not they didn't meet on that IAR, are they making growth and achieving on that math assessment. And then finally, 2 other measures that we're having a hard time aggregating into this, but that would be our access. Our goal ultimately is to include data from our access test for our ELLs, our multilingual students, and then data from our individualized education plans, which would be sort of like, did the students who didn't make those other 2 goals, did they meet maybe their annual goals on their IEP, or are they making progress towards English language proficiency? But those 2 other dots, we have not been able, bless you, to incorporate into that metric just yet. So really what we're still looking at is IAR and math. Again, big picture in our strategic plan, we don't want just a growth and achievement on standards. We also want these big picture ideas, and we'll talk a little bit more about how we're starting to partner with District 67 and 115 to really flesh out these 6 competencies and bring a plan forward for how to instruct, and then ultimately how to measure, if we can, some of those competencies. Some may be more self-assessment, and some may be more us kind of looking at products or performance-based assessments. Again, we've talked about our mission, vision, and motto. You know that we have 5 big goals, starting with student achievement and growth, extending into the learning environment. Community partnerships is one of our goals, staff and educator retention and excellence, and then finally fiscal responsibility and how we manage our resources. So when we began down the strategic plan, we had 2 SMART goals that we initially had based on the data that we already had with us. And then we also were collecting some baseline data for goals 3 and 4. So last year, our goal was that by June, we would increase the percentage of students from 80 to 83% who were showing growth and achievement on those 2 assessments. Both ELA and math were at 80% last year. So we were able to have one goal that kind of incorporated both of those things. We're breaking that out into 2 goals this year because we didn't have the same growth in both of those areas. And then we also measured our culture and climate of staff, and we wanted to increase the level of satisfaction and engagement for our staff from 82.4% to 84%. And then we were collecting baseline data on student and family engagement, and then on parent and community participation. To be honest, we haven't figured out parent and community participation just yet. So we do have the 2 goals for student engagement and family engagement. We've created 2 SMART goals around those. We'll continue to work on participation from community events. And then our goal 5 is building a system. So we're still in the process of building that system. So how did we do? So we went from 80% to 85% in ELA on either the Illinois Assessment of Readiness or the MAP assessment, which is really great. We met that portion of our goal and even exceeded it. However, we slid back a little bit in math. So we went from 80% to 79% of our students growing and achieving either on the IAR or the MAP. Again, when all the data becomes final, that will all be broken down and disaggregated by grade level and demographic subgroup and socioeconomic income levels, and all of that disaggregation we will talk about with regard to the IAR. So that's how we ended up on those 2 goals. And then in terms of our culture and climate, we slipped a little there too. So we wanted to go from 82.4 to 84, and we actually went down to 77.7%, reporting high levels of engagement and satisfaction. And then on our baseline data, these again were on the Humanex surveys. 38% of our students reported high levels of satisfaction and engagement. We had a bunch in that middle column, not a whole lot in the lowest columns, but we had a bunch in that middle area. And then 64.5% of our families reporting high levels of school pride and feeling that the quality that we develop or that we deliver is high quality. So other celebrations that we'll talk more about, but just at a high level, we saw higher than expected growth in 3rd, 4th, and 6th grade English language arts and 4th and 7th grade math. Those are big areas for celebration for us. We saw higher than expected growth for our ELL students in math, which is great. There's a lot of language development that goes on in math as well. And then higher expected growth overall at the middle school in English language arts. So big celebrations there. Couple of areas that we're targeting right now, just as we're looking at the data come in, are 5th and 8th grade math that we had lower than expected growth. And then obviously, as we break those down, there's going to be other areas we'll be looking to attack as well. So we have some new proposed metrics. We'd like to break goal 1 into 2 areas of ELA and math. So for this year, we'd like to move from 85 to 87% in ELA. And then we're going to keep our goal at 83% and move from 79 to the 83 that was our goal last year. And then we would like to set some goals around, and then for our culture and climate, keeping the goal at 84, moving from 77.7 to 84% on that Humanex survey. And then on our baseline data, we're setting a goal incrementally of 64.5 to 67% of families reporting pride and high quality service, and 38 to 40% for students. Since we haven't worked specifically on those goals, we're setting them kind of small. We're not exactly sure how we're going to be translating that survey into action steps. I'll talk about it in a minute based on the bottom items that they talked about. We'll see how that goes the first year. So in goal 1, obviously there's 2 goals, one for ELA and math. And so some of our action steps you already know about. The guaranteed viable transparent curriculum, really breaking down the standards and bringing attention and awareness to the outcomes that students are expected to perform, and especially the Illinois Assessment of Readiness, and paying a special attention to the actual standards and what the state expects. really, our goal is for most students to make that first bucket, of meeting or exceeding state standards. So really, we're gonna spend a lot of our release time digging into the standards and getting familiar again. I know they've done this work before, but sometimes when you're implementing a program, you kind of can lose sight of the actual standards that are aligned with what your state assesses. Any kind of program or textbook is designed for many, many states. And states all have different standards. And so sometimes when teachers start working into a program, they kind of lose sight of those standards and the expectations that are out there for your state specifically. So we're gonna be doing a lot of that. A big area for us, as we know, with the release time and the enrichment program, is that we're reducing our elementary teaching responsibilities to just ELA, math, and SEL. SEL is in there too, but with regard to these two goals, because our enrichment team is taking on science and social studies. So that should help to focus our elementary teachers a little bit better. In terms of ELA, we're investing in resources and assessments which are more aligned with the science of reading, especially at the foundational grades, K1 and 2, in terms of phonics and phonemic awareness and then also some grammar pieces at the older grades. And so those have already started to be implemented at the middle school. So again, kind of breaking down the foundations of literacy and investing in more resources. And like Tracy and Jackie talked about, some more professional development in that piece too. The inclusive schools work goes across the board. We know that the students who are not achieving and growing need different strategies. Our teachers need to be prepared to teach them differently. They can reach those goals. We just need to provide our teachers with those strategies. So the embedded professional development every month for all teachers is going to be really instrumental and critical for that. And then the school-wide enrichment for all of our students and tiered support for our advanced learners. So bringing back that enrichment program, getting some enriched activities for all students in K through 5, and then also additional supplemental support for those students who even need more than that in ELA and math. And then the redesign of the only other piece that's different in math is that redesign of the math course options for grades 4 and 5. So we're offering some more advanced placements in grades 4 and 5 so that we can offer more kids the opportunity to be in those higher, more accelerated tracks in the middle school. So lots happening in ELA and math. In terms of student data and how they're feeling about their experience in school, you can see from their survey, their top 5 areas, the trend there is they feel cared about, they feel a sense of belonging, they feel like they can trust their teachers to care about them. Those are great things for our top 5. In the bottom 5, choice came out, and we've reported it. We went through this data. This is just a reminder. We talked about choice. We talked about energy at the start of the school day, getting, again, the decisions is sort of that choice piece, looking forward to being at school, and then having shared responsibility for creating the classroom roles and expectations. Yep.
And was this survey taken again?
This was in early spring.
So like, even though they probably did create classroom.
They might not.
they didn't-
Yeah, they might not have remembered. Part of that then, here, I'll talk about, like, so when we take those bottom 5, some of the action pieces for that classroom rules and expectations, we are with the ruler work, reinforcing if that expectation, like, so we've created shared contracts or like social contracts and charters and things before. The part that kind of slips towards the middle of the year is reminding kids when they've actually not met the expectations or kind of not done what's expected. And so we're going to be reinforcing through that work. The point of a charter or the social, contract is so that you have something to lean on if kids are not doing it. And we need to be on top of that. We need to be reminding them so that we bring them to their attention more often. So it could be that.
Is there also maybe some clarification needed to the students about what choice in the classroom actually looks like?
So remember we had this conversation. I do think there's part of that. And I also think sometimes not everything is a choice. And so we're kind of taking a look at really making sure that the choices that we give to kids are thoughtful and intentional and make a difference, because not necessarily all choices are gonna be impactful or lead to better outcomes for all students. So
So we talked about this, but I feel like are we revisiting the questions that are being asked in the survey as something that is important to us? Like,
So the survey this survey isn't customizable, but I think if we look at those data, no matter how they come back, we can decide the action plans, which is why I didn't really include the choice one in our action steps, because I think it's gonna be important as we work to build a curriculum. And especially around inclusive schools, I think it's gonna come naturally, because a big part of inclusive schools is adapting the instruction and assessment to meet the needs of the students. Whether that translates to students without explicitly telling them, here, you have it, look at all the choices you have, I don't know yet. But the important part for us is that those strategies are presented to teachers and they're given those professional development opportunities to start embedding them in the curriculum. We've already talked a little bit about screen time, social media, sleep. This has been part of our parent engagement programming for the last year or two. Obviously, the anxious generation goes into that as well. There is a lot of research to talk about the fact that students are missing out on sleep. Some of that is screen time, social media, or having those devices at night. So our tech committee will be talking a little bit about that, how much screen time is happening here. The parental controls is a big piece of it. And then also, what are our expectations or community expectations on work that's done outside the classroom? So ultimately, there's not a whole lot we can do from here other than support parent decision-making. Okay, on the staff side, you can see our top 5. People are pretty committed, dedicated. They like being here. They have the opportunity to do things they like and enjoy. Our bottom 5 as a staff concern feeling in the loop on business decisions, or that they feel like they're aligned with our mission and vision. A lot of it has to do with spending time with their supervisor. This one is one we talk about a lot because as you know, we're kind of lean on our administrative team and we all play a lot of different roles. And so staff actually interact with a lot of different administrators. And so the quality time might not be with the person you're thinking of when you think of your supervisor. It might be with other administrators or other support people. So we're kind of still thinking through that one. Recognition obviously is one that sometimes comes out. It came out in our bottom 5. Using data to guide continuous improvement, and then that coaching relationship as well. So the business decisions, Kevin talked about starting up our tech committee again to make sure that teachers have input into those decisions and those conversations. Jay will also be starting up a financial advisory board that will include some staff stakeholders and board representatives, potentially community members as well. The release time and the collaborative planning opportunities where a lot of this coaching, professional development, quality time, like that's going to be a lot of that, especially for elementary. But I don't, even though the enrichment program is only happening in elementary, what I want you to know is that Jackie's planning thoughtfully for release time still for our middle school teachers. We just had some today with our social studies department. So we're able to still bring in guest teachers for the work that needs to be done at middle while we transition that program over. And then finally, we continue with our Give Thanks program, which is the recognition portion. We rebooted that again at the beginning of the year, and we're going to be encouraging people to continue to recognize each other. And then finally, our family data. Again, I feel like communication came out as a big one. Kids feel welcome at school. Parents feel a comfort approaching teachers. And they feel respected. Those are great top 5. On our bottom 5, we know our cafeteria became an issue and came out in a few different surveys. So we've adjusted that this year and have gotten pretty good feedback so far. Nothing's gonna be perfect, but it's been going well so far from what we can tell. The part about feedback, we actually feel like this is going to be our big area. We've heard in many different ways that parents don't feel like they get a lot of feedback throughout the year on how their students are progressing. So we are focused specifically on redesigning a reporting system at elementary. And that's like just a fancy way of saying like a communication audit. Like where are all of the places that we communicate with parents about student progress and trying to make sure that we're putting more out there so that there's more that parents can hang on to and understand how their child is doing, not just the report card, but also work being sent home, how parent-teacher conferences are going, et cetera. So,
So more individualized information about their
Yes.
child,
Yes.
right? Not like the Friday afternoon.
no, not the curriculum update or the newsletter, more like specifically how is your student, or just seeing their students' work or assessments come home. We recognize that this is an area that's been, a source of concern for parents for a while, and we've taken a couple years to dig into the history around that, and we think we have some good plans for increasing the amount of communication that comes home. And then, the superintendent came out in the back, is feeling comfortable approaching with questions or concerns, so one of those things was the book club this summer, and just continuing to have opportunities for parents to join and have conversations or think through topics, so, kind of working toward thinking through different opportunities that we might be able to provide throughout the year that way as well. So those are the action steps. Obviously, all of this leads hopefully to increases in student achievement and growth. None of this is done for any other purpose other than to make sure that our parents and students feel like they're getting the best product that they can get in District 65. And ultimately, goal one is everything feeds into goal one. We want to make sure that our kids are growing and achieving. So with that, we know, I kind of put in some of the strategic plan things, but basically those are our areas that we're really working on this year and trying to focus our energy.
So lots of really good information in there, lots of celebrating factors, and a few that are a little concerning. It'll be very interesting to hear the follow-up in October when we get the actual breakdown of, more detailed information on particularly the math. Why that didn't grow.
Yeah,
What areas did it grow? So what we need to work on.
so Jackie and I were able to meet with our representative from the Regional Office of Education today, as a matter of fact, to kind of go through some of the detailed reports that we're getting back and start to look at. We can actually tell what questions our kids got, what areas they were tested on, and there were definitely some discrepancies in what the assessment gave to kids last year, because high level, and help me if I'm explaining this wrong, the test platform changed between a vendor. So we changed from one vendor to another vendor, and the old vendor had a test bank of questions that the new vendor used up. And so some areas did not have questions, and so it was heavy in some areas and not others. So it's a little bit skewed this year, which, like, for me, it's a little skewed every year, because it seems like we're always switching between vendors and we're always having different test platforms, and so we do look, and we will, when I present on the IER report card, cohort data, as well as trend data and grades. It's a little frustrating to compare year over year, because the test is hardly ever the same. So, we're working on it. We're looking at what we need to address, and we'll try to make system improvements from the data that we're given on the IAR, but that's why I'm grateful that we have multiple measures. Because it is a long, valid, reliable test for the most part, but comparing year over year is really challenging.
Quickly with that, does the state give like an overall this year districts in Illinois increase or decrease in math by this percent, or like look at the big picture ever?
There's a state report card that's out there, so you probably could, you could probably see the full state. I mean, there's the better way, and I'll go through this when we look at the report card, the better way, if you're really interested, is they have achievement scatter plots. And those are actually more interesting to look at, kind of where we stand in comparison to the rest of
You
the
had one
state.
of those last year.
Yeah, and we'll look through that again in ELA math, and then that way you can actually look at districts that are comparable to yours. In terms of subgroup percentages or even enrollment, like you can break down and look at comparable districts and see where you stand in terms of ELA math.
So does the state beta test these tests at all? Do they ever have anybody test them before our kids take the test?
Yeah, the test questions go through pilots, so oftentimes there'll be pilot questions built into the test.
And
So
there's
that they
still
can-
like discrepancies? I guess I'm wondering, like, what can we do? Is there anything that we can do to get back to the state to make these issues go away.
No, I mean, it's really just a contract that the state enters into. They have to go through a bidding process as well, and then it just changes hands sometimes. Specific test items are tested just like any other test item, and then they'll look for a test item that really matches the profile of a good item, which means there's a bell curve, you know, you have the majority of kids who are getting it right or somewhere within that distribution. So they run the test questions through that. What it really comes down to is the areas of questions that they had left, and for some reason they weren't able to write new questions because probably the bid came back late, I don't know. You know, but there was definitely a difference between the two vendors.
And we know that the IAR questions kids on the state standards, right? So this idea of making sure we're revisiting the standards should help that as well.
Revisiting the standards and more importantly, revisiting the expectations that kids need to meet in order to meet expectations on that assessment. Because those questions are written in specific ways and they have, it's not like multiple choice versus, but more, what does it mean to analyze text in that structure versus what we're doing in class? So really aligning our instructional methods and the text level of complexity and looking at the question complexity and embedding that into our instruction throughout the year, which is good. Those are all good things. That's what our standards are based on. And then instead of test prep, we're really just focusing on the standards, which is really the leading indicator of what we want to do.
But then when they take the test, they have been doing problems
Yeah.
like that, and so it should.
And reading those levels of text or writing about math, explaining their thinking. There is a bit of a tech component that the prep needs to take care of, because like, if you look at how to take some of those, it's like, there's dragging and dropping and there's scrolling and there's definitely some tech skills, especially our third and fourth graders might have issues with. So practicing on the computer is important, but more than that, it's just embedding those assessment and performance tasks that match more the rigor of what the assessment's asking them to do.
For the QNX exit you slide, the N number is the number
The
of
number of
respondents.
responses. Yep.
Were you surprised that the results for number 4 go from the students?
That it was low?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was surprised, I would have been surprised at that. Well,
Yeah, I think, it'll be interesting to see how that trends, because
but that was for all grades?
it wasn't for all grades.
Oh.
It was at like 3rd through 8th. We just went with the same number of kids.
Right,
They're too young at, you know,
yeah,
K to 2. But sometimes when kids encounter a survey for the first time, they read the questions in a little bit of a different way, or they're feeling cranky that day. I don't know. You know, it could be any number of things, like something could have gone wrong just that day, and then it influence how well they're feeling about school that day.
short memory.
Sometimes, right? I mean,
I take skills that way sometimes.
Yeah, see that?
absolutely, it's like human nature, right? So part of those two surveys, I mean, I've had more experience with the staff culture and climate survey. I do think it's pretty reliable in terms of telling you what the trends are in the organization. I don't have as much experience with the family and student one. So I think it's gonna be important for us to keep evaluating whether or not that's helpful data, or whether or not we're seeing any sort of change with the action items that we're doing, or those kinds of initiatives that we're taking.
No, I think that's good to be open, because I mean, it's just relying on
Yeah.
one source of measurement, especially a survey,
Mhm.
where you're not really sure how the survey is designed or results are, so.
I mean, I think the company that does the survey, they use it with a lot of districts, so, I feel confident that it's probably a good survey, in terms of being reliable, you know, in terms of being valid, but I don't know. I just don't have as much experience with it, and neither does the team. So I think the first couple of years, we'll see how this shakes out and what we see or don't see improve or not. I don't know. Part of it'll be asking the kids, you know, how was that survey? Was there anything you didn't understand? And I think we'll probably have to get to that point too. Even with the staff one, we keep having conversations in the debrief with staff, and we've taken it now, this will be the 5th year. We continue to talk about that one about who's my supervisor. Because we do have an assistant principal, a principal, we have, you know, Tracy and Jackie and Kevin and Jay, we all kind of work with teachers. And so we've tried to broaden that definition to like administrative team. How is the administrative team supporting you? Are you getting quality? But that's not always the way people read it or react to it. So we'll be open to thinking of other ways that we can gather that feedback from students and families as well.
Looking ahead to your next presentation on this in October, will you, is it possible to show like a breakdown of kind of how you got to to that data with like this many students met the goals for IAR, this many did for math, and kind of show where those numbers came?
Yep, we'll do the whole thing.
Oh.
Yeah, we'll do the whole thing. Just so everyone's aware, I did that first metric by hand, and now we have Accra that ran a report. So they actually built a report for us that takes all our raw IAR data, all our raw math data, and feeds it through the formula. And that's how we get our aggregate number. So I will bring that report as well, and then we'll talk about the flow chart.
Great, thank you.
And also just more information from a state level. How are those subgroups doing? Look at our achievement gaps. We'll look at the scatter plots and like go through that interactive report card so that, because it's not just for us, parents can look at all of that data too.
And then the portrait of a learner assessment, like, I understand the need, like, we went through that process, this is what we want our kids to be, but I don't know, how many assessments do we need, and like, how do you assess like if a kid's empathetic? Like,
Exactly. Those are the conversations we're having. I think we're 3 districts. And so administratively, we're representing what we feel like our boards are looking for too. And so there's definitely a feeling that some of these need some metrics. I would agree with you that there's some that hard to measure, confidence and empathy being 2. They would have to be more self-reported, but I think we can offer students opportunities to demonstrate those things and talk about what it means to be an empathetic person, talk about what it means to demonstrate confidence or present yourself that way, be a clear communicator. So what we're really trying to build are some benchmark opportunities, not every year, but maybe building a portfolio or having experiences where a student could reflect and maybe even self-assess. And so we'd be looking for self-reported growth or feelings of improvement in some of those areas. And then also some benchmark projects or experiences that would help them to integrate some of those in with the coursework that they're doing. We're trying to stay tight with 67, obviously, so that all kids come into 115 prepared, at least with a shared vocabulary. I think the biggest part for us is like, what does it mean to be a confident person? What does that look like? You know, how would you demonstrate that? What does clear communication look like? What are the areas that you think how do you critically think? We have had conversations about maybe not all grades do all the competencies. Maybe there's a focus in the early grades and then the middle grades and then the high school to really let teachers focus in and go deeply into those concepts. So we're still in the beginning stages of that. But Jackie and I actually met with Renee Fitzsimmons and Steve Dunn at the high school last week, who are kind of spearheading the work in those 2 districts. So we have another meeting on the calendar already, so.
thank you.
Anything else? All right, board calendar, 2024-25.
Okay, so Carrie and Ann and I had an opportunity to meet, I think a couple of weeks ago. Was it?
Yeah, maybe just last week. I don't know. Recently.
Recently to try to flesh out a calendar of presentations. It was really helpful for me. I think 2 years ago, we did that with Andy and you, and were able to map out the year so that the board could really see what you're interested in having updates on. So included in your packet is a calendar of presentations that you can see. If this feels good to you as a board, I'd also like to kind of make these a little bit more public for people in the community so that they can see what's coming up if they're interested in participating. So you can see, we just did some of our September presentations. In October, we would talk about a little bit more about the Illinois literacy plan, the updates that we made to our assessment map, and then some reading updates in terms of instruction. November, we do a little wrap up and future considerations for the Anxious Generation Book Club. Austin will be coming to do a safety and security presentation, much like Kevin did tonight. We'd have our enrichment team come and talk to us in December, a January check-in on inclusive practices, a February check-in on how the release time is going. That's a big investment. We want to make sure that we circle back and see how that's going. March is a light month. We hope for presentations because that's typically a staffing month and budgeting. And so there's a lot of like operational reports that come in March. An update in math, on math in April. Some recommendations for our talks, maybe from the tech committee and admin committee on the themes in the anxious generation. And then nothing really in June, other than things that maybe we didn't get to. The other thing to note is how we're gonna structure, or how we'd like to structure recognition. We love recognition, but we also felt like it wasn't as big a celebration as we could make it when we do it at every month. So we thought maybe breaking it into a before winter break recognition celebration and then one after winter break, where we would actually do it before the regular meeting, have sort of a reception for families and kids, have time to like network and communicate afterwards, and then come back for our regular meeting. So it's not officially a part of the meeting. We felt like sometimes people would be recognized, they got all dressed up and came here and were here for like 5 minutes. And it's like, bye, we'll see you later. So we thought it might be better to just consolidate and do a bigger,
It'd feel more like a celebration.
yes, maybe a bigger presentation. And then we are also talking about bringing in more student staff updates by video. It's hard sometimes to get students here, to get staff here. It's a nighttime commitment. They're already doing a lot at night. But we do feel like we could handle 2 updates from each building, which would be 4 updates over the course of the year. And then the principals would work with the staff to update you on something fun and exciting that's happening in the building, that would come to us as a video. And of course, they could join us if they want, but more kids we think could participate and staff that way.
And if there's anything that you think we missed, or, you know, you want to see that we didn't think about, or you have feedback on what we did put on the schedule, like, I mean, that's why this is on the agenda, right? So that-
Yeah,
for
and
everybody.
we have next month to talk about it, because obviously I'm already presenting everything in September that's on the calendar, so if we do need to make adjustments, we can bring it back to the regular meeting this month and make adjustments. Really don't need to vote on it, but consensus would be nice.
And this just it takes into account like all the other,
Yes, well,
So, like,
this
you-
doesn't list. all-
it doesn't list it, but the
Yeah.
things we do every year, so we're not having like recognition and something else and then like a budget presentation, no offense.
Who's our favorite?
Lasers.
Yeah.
and That was.
Walk up
Music,
songs.
yeah. No, we definitely have some standing annual presentations that can take a lot of time. So yes, we were trying to balance so that we have enough conversation in the meetings, but then also make room for really the nuts and bolts of
The
it.
board work that, yeah, is still going to be there.
I think it looks good. Thank you for putting together.
Okay.
All right. Student representative to BOE.
Okay, so Nate and Joe and Jackie and I have worked a little bit on what we think the board, what might be helpful to the board in terms of a student representative. What we kind of have settled on is that we would have 2. It always feels nice to have a buddy at the table. So we think we'd like to have an 8th grade student every year, and then either a 6th or 7th grade student also with the 8th grade students. 7th grade student could transition into 8th grade spot, maybe doesn't want to, but we would always want to recruit an 8th grader. And then they might have had experience, but they might not. You know, we're kind of giving them that option. We would like Nate and Joe to go into advisories to explain what this is about in person, and then have them fill out an application that you can see in your packet. which is just a few questions. And we would want the parent also to sign off that this is something that they're okay with the student doing. You can see that the purpose of them being here is for your, if you would like their perspective on something, they should be prepared to answer questions from their perspective. And then also feel free to ask questions from their perspective as well. They would not be board members in the sense that they would not be voting members of the board. And we would cap their nighttime commitment to 8:30 or earlier, so that parents could plan on when they need to pick them up. So
But they would get information like.
they would
a
get
semi packet
Yep.
beforehand.
get the packet to review it and be able to see the presentations. And
And who would be their like mentor at school then?
so
Or mate, or,
I think we would love to even have a board member be a student mentor. So that if they sat at the table, maybe they sat next to the board member that was comfortable mentoring them to the side and kind of helping them stay on track or answering their questions if they don't want to ask them out loud. And then we're looking for opportunities for them to share back information through maybe student council or other areas in school, so they can kind of report back what's happening at the board level as well.
It's a great idea.
Again, don't need you to settle on it tonight. If we can have consensus by the next meeting, we'll get the process up and running. Since it's our first time, it might be good to just say we'll start this after winter break. So we give us a lot of time to kind of let people fill out the applications, understand the commitment, and get their questions answered before we get them seated.
Maybe we have an idea of, what if we get 10 kids who want to do this? How are we selecting?
So we threw out the idea of having the board select, take the names off, give you the applications and let you rank them, and then we would pick our top two.
Were you gonna ask them?
I was gonna say, it would be, I like the idea of after winter break, because then they could come see a meeting, right? And see if it's
Well,
something.
they're considering it. Sure.
Yeah, because maybe they don't know what to expect, so maybe we say, you can come,
if you want to apply.
if you wanna apply, we suggest you come to the, whatever meeting.
Is there a meeting before the deadline?
We haven't set a deadline yet,
Oh, perfect.
so, yeah,
So yes,
yeah. And we think we can do that.
So if they're interested, there's like a couple options that maybe they
Yeah.
could come and see. one.
Yeah, I mean, if you're comfortable with it at the end of this month, then we could really announce it in October and they could come to November or December. There would be a couple options.
Okay, I like this.
I think our kids are up to the challenge. I think they'll be amazing. Any other questions? Okay. Awesome.
okay. Ed read legislative concerns and priorities, Laura.
Okay. So I submitted our answers to the survey. Everyone had basically the same things. I'm happy to read out sort of, what we got, but I would tell you across the board, and it was sort of weird. All the priorities aligned pretty much. Like there were two that sort of funding and cybersecurity were really high up there. And then the polling thing was at the bottom. The polling issue doesn't affect us. It affects districts that are very small and they use schools as a place to vote. And then you have strangers going into the school.
And they usually don't.
But I
Yeah.
and I talked to our county clerk about it because I mean, that would freak me out if that was happening in our schools. But he said a lot of you just sometimes have to pay for a polling place and a lot of places can't afford it. So it's a very complicated issue. But everyone, I mean, I submitted everything everyone sent me and they were all very aligned. And I think it would be helpful though, and I told them we were meeting tonight and I said, can I send you additional thoughts once we've met? Because no one really had an answer on the overarching legislative concern because we felt like we needed information from the district on what you guys think is, I mean, not that we don't have opinions, but we're looking for guidance for you.
Yeah, we did talk about that. And I think one thing that's always on the plate is just a possible reduction or consolidation of the mandates. And I did have an opportunity to meet with someone from Representative Bob Morgan's office that came and asked, and that was something that I said to him as well. It becomes unwieldy at some point, and we do have an elected board that is charged with knowing, and setting direction for the district. So it feels, more and more onerous every year to deal with the mandates, unfunded or funded. So that's one thing. And then the other thing we thought about, there was a question on there about data sources that EdRed could be considering. And we just had a thought of, since the mandates have been implemented, has there been any data tracking and whether or not these have achieved any sort of goals or results that anybody was looking to achieve? Especially considering mandated trainings for our teachers. They have an inordinate amount of yearly mandated trainings and, you know, the question about what goal is this trying to, what is the goal for this? Because has there been a reduction in incidents? Have we seen any sort of major improvement from implementing such an inordinate amount of mandated training and mandated curriculum reform, et cetera? So that, if there isn't, that might be a good thing to ask for.
Right.
Mandated training is not popular.
No. It's not. You didn't love it?
That will result in a lot of surveys for us to complete.
So many, yeah, right, exactly. We'll have a ton of surveys. I mean, yeah, it's not. And I know there was an effort to sort of put us on a 5-year cycle, but quite frankly, it made it more difficult to manage because some of them remain on an annual cycle. And now we have some 2 years and now some 3 years and now some 4 years. And Amy's about to lose her mind. How to assign all these and keep track of them. And so it actually became more difficult. And so again, we have professional educators here and we have boards of education and administrative teams that can make these schools and districts safe places and places of good, effective learning. And I just don't know that we need all of that input.
Okay. So Laura, your collecting of the information and sending it back is what's the end game of EdRed for this? To get a consensus of like their local, who they work with and then use that
Yes,
as
from the
their.
districts to sort of get a sense of what the priorities are
And they'll
from the
fight.
boards into this next year.
And they've done this in the past and we probably just haven't caught.
Yeah.
Got it.
And I'll ask her when they're report, you know, when they pull it all together and when we get that information.
Thanks for doing that. Yeah, thank you for doing this.
I know we're kind of on the same topic, but we're part of EdRed and there's administrative groups and this IASB. Is there worth us, if there are issues, like dealing directly with our legislature?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I had mixed results, like they don't even acknowledge that, like you send them something at sometimes, but so I don't know if that's something, if there are certain topics we should bring to them that maybe are specific to our district.
I don't think anything at this time. I mean, one thing that we talk about is that we're lucky in this district that we rely mainly on property taxes for our funding. And so there are districts that need to pay much more attention to, you know, adhering and making sure they're doing X, Y, and Z all the time. Not to say that we don't adhere to those things, but we have some decision-making authority there. And we also have resources to be able to keep up with the mandates and complaints. So there's nothing right now that we can't do. I mean, and we want to do everything that's in the best interest of our kids. But if there are things, I think reaching out to our representatives is really important, even if they don't respond. It's important for them to hear from people. And, you know, we were at that legislative breakfast, and I think some of those opportunities, you have an opportunity to talk through things and how it really feels when you're working in a school district, but.
I have 2 questions. We don't have a legislative committee for our.
No, and the Lake Forest one hasn't met in like 2 years, right?
So I'm curious, like, what effect or what could, to Tim's point, is there something that maybe we as a board should consider on like a bi-monthly or, you know, 3 times a year letter writing of our board of what we're standing up for whatever we want to see change, that we can like, if we send something that wasn't form on the, you know.
So we have a couple of areas that I think you could address that. One is through the resolutions at the ISB, at the AAA, the joint conference where we would potentially look at submitting a resolution and then having, the ISB lobby on behalf of
Right.
boards.
Right.
Or witness slips. When the legislature is in session, those come out from EdRed to support or oppose initiatives. Like, I think
Outside of those two, we don't need to be doing.
we can, if there are areas that we want to look at, but really, I think those are our best options. EdRed, which is supportive of the initiatives that are pertinent, especially to Lake and Cook County, in particular. And then also, if there is something that's impacting us, terrifically as a district that we think other districts might want, boards of education might also want to lobby for or against, then the resolution would be the other area that we could look at.
So if there is something, you wouldn't be shy to bring it up. And
No,
sure, we know. Okay.
but also bring those things to my attention too, and we can work together.
Yeah.
Anything else? All right, let's talk about superintendent evaluation. That's happening. Yeah, so,
Is Laura gonna come, so will we have another agenda? This probably should have been said at the beginning or at the end, where we
We'll
have
put
some
this back
sort
on.
of, yeah, will we
I'm-
have Ed
I'm gonna email Bridget and see when we're gonna get sort of the whole survey results. And then I'll let you guys know and we'll put it on the agenda for that.
Sounds great.
we have to talk about like the standing EdRed update too.
Yes. Oh, okay.
Like,
I
I
mean,
mean,
some-
like, it doesn't have to be
Yeah,
time
that'd be
sensitive,
great.
but like, if
Okay.
they have time to be on our agenda at some point.
Okay.
to come.
No, I think Bridget Laura wants to give.
They usually have a meeting once a month, not always, but usually. And I go to those, so I could, assuming it's not a month where where they don't have a meeting, I'm happy every month to just say like, here's what's going on, or there's nothing. Yeah, not much happening. So,
Yeah.
No, that's great. So I'd like to, keep the evaluation similar as it has been in years past, just adding the 4 goals, the 4 SMART goals that we've outlined in our strategic plan. Those are aligned with the rest of the administrative team, so we all are evaluated on those goals. As you know, those SMART goals are a percentage. The other percent of the evaluation is their professional responsibilities and other domains that, are contained within our job responsibilities. So mine, are relationship with the board, community engagement, staff relationships, business and finance, and educational leadership. And then under each of those categories, there's multiple criteria, that I'm evaluated on. So if this is comfortable with the board, then I will begin again loading evidence into the evaluation system and complete my self-evaluation. You would be able to have feedback in the system for a mid-year eval. I think we did it before Thanksgiving, or did we did between Thanksgiving and winter break?
I remember it being, we turning it in right before winter break.
Yeah. So my goal is to get it done by Thanksgiving, so that you have them.
We have time to
Yeah,
do it.
yeah. And then the summative rating would happen in March. So not any really substantial changes other than the SMART goals.
And we're using the same system.
That's the proposal.
I think yes. Does anyone?
I thought it worked well.
Me too. And we know how to do it. Let's do it. We're gonna figure it. You and I are gonna figure it out.
It's really very, I know that Andy had a different system for the mid-year eval, and we can connect with him on, I think we talked about it a little bit before he left. Or we can.
We still use super eval.
Yeah.
We just took the information out
And
and put it
did
in
some
something.
things, yeah. So, if, again, we don't have to decide tonight, we can approve it, at the next meeting, but yeah, please reach out if you have any thoughts or questions on that.
Thank you. Policy update.
So the policy committee met, I think, last week, and we reviewed press packet 115, the majority of, I believe, all of press packet 115 are 5-year reviews. There's really nothing in there that's decision-making on the part of the board. So really just looking through our policies, making sure they're up to date. We did talk about 3 policies that are outside of that packet. One is about undesignated medication. Our nurse at the middle school brought to our attention that she doesn't feel like undesignated glucagon is necessary in the schools because it's just not a solution that we would use if a student was experiencing an emergency like that. So she proposed that we use the wording shall keep if we want to keep glucagon, but that we wouldn't have to. Whereas the other medications are a shall in
So
them.
we changed the wording to may
May.
instead of shall.
It's our recommendation. The policy 5170, which just designates a copyright agent, we're just proposing that be me. Which that will go and be updated into the packet. That's just a person who would be notified if we had any copyright infringement accusations in our district. And then we reviewed our absenteeism and truancy policy to make sure we're in compliance before we submit it again to the state. So this is the first read again. We'll bring these back for the second meeting in September for final approval. And then the next packet is gonna have a lot more information. That one's gonna address all of the Title IX changes that went into effect August 1st. That, you know, we've already started adjusting our procedures, but it's a pretty convoluted set of regs right now, just based on cases that are moving through the courts. So we're doing the best we can to stay on top of it and make sure we're in compliance. But we'll go through that next time.
I want to give a quick shout out to Kathy because I reached out to 3 other school nurses on the North Shore and they don't keep glucagon, they don't keep oxygen tanks. But they also had not read through the policy and were like, oh, I think ours still, so just, I want to shout out to her for being that thorough.
Yes, good point. Kudos to Kathy Sullivan.
We have 2 amazing nurses and yeah, they
She's like,
they are
that should I know?
yeah. Yeah, we're very lucky to have both.
Next up is EIS report.
This is again, just an annual report that we submit every year and we always let the board see it ahead of time and approve the report. It's the salary and benefits report for.
Is that public?
Yes.
Is it on the website?
It always this week.
Yep.
It's all just.
It will be, once we approve it. I don't think it's out yet.
Last year's.
Yeah,
But there is always.
we're required to have that on the website.
Okay, board refunding sale update. Do I let Jay talk?
Yeah.
So, I wanted to remind the board, we got our AAA bond rating reaffirmed, so that's great. That's the highest rating possible for a district. It will mean that we can sell bonds at lower interest rates in the market. The bond refunding actually will go to sale tomorrow. It'll be a competitive sale, so I've not heard anything from Tammy saying otherwise, so I'm assuming they're going tomorrow and we'll be accepting bids from multiple places. Our preliminary offering statement, which was in your packet, is the public document that gets sent, that gets posted on a central website, and that's what all the investors use to determine if they want to buy our bonds or not and how much they're willing to pay for
I
them.
don't think, I don't think I would have to.
I sent it to,
We'll get
we can
it.
put it in there. It's on, I think it's on our website. Anyway, so that's going tomorrow. And then we will know the results in the afternoon. We'll have to sign some documents and then the closing will probably be in October. And the preliminary estimate is that the numbers that you saw in the spring are looking still to be about right. And we're hoping to save about $150,000 in interest payments for the remaining life of the bonds over 10 years, the next 10 years, and we're not extending them. Schedule off, so.
Wonderful. And just for anyone listening, a reminder that this was something we approved to be done Was it last spring?
Yeah, in the spring, the board approved a resolution, giving us authority within certain parameters to refinance these bonds, and so that's what we're.
I'm very grateful for PMA as a partner
Yes.
for us in that. Tammy's been amazing, kind of walking us through the whole thing and then also supporting us to reaffirm that AAA rating, so.
Shay, what's the total bond offering that we're doing?
It will be just over 3 million, 3.3 million.
Anything else?
Hoping for a good sale.
Yes,
So we will
it's exciting.
let you know what the results are.
Don't usually get to look at sales and stuff. Worrying about sales and all this thing. All right, you want to keep it going with your final budget presentation?
Okay. Before I start my final budget presentation, Dr. Lealy mentioned that I'd be creating or starting a finance and budgeting advisory committee. So I'm announcing that to all of our staff and community who are listening tonight. We'll be sending something out. I'm looking for, we'll probably have 3 meetings, one in late October, one in early winter, January, February, and then one maybe April in the spring. I'm open to topics, but I'm thinking in the fall, more budget and taxes, and then kind of operations, everything else operational in the winter, and then capital projects is another big area. Capital and budget and projects. So anyone's interested, please let me know. And we'll be sending something out for those who aren't watching tonight.
I can't imagine everyone isn't watching tonight. There's nothing else to watch on TV.
So, this budget presentation is fairly similar to the tentative budget presentation that I did in May. So I'll just go over some of the changes. But just as a reminder, we are required to approve a tentative budget, and then have it be on display on our website or in the district office for 30 days, and then we approve the final budget in September, and it's due by the end of September to the state board, to the county. Our budget is balanced, our operating budget is balanced. I do the debt, so I have forecasted our bond refinancing in here, and it makes it look a little wonky, so it's going to, I want to explain. When we refinance the bonds, we are basically taking the proceeds from the sale and we're paying off all of the old bonds. So our capital or our principal payments double basically because we're paying off the old bonds. And we're also paying our regular debt service for that year. But the money that we get is down in other sources and uses. It's not considered revenue, so it makes it look a little funny. And then for capital projects, we have the remaining half of the middle school air handler project. It was done this summer. Half of it was in June, half of it was in July. And so that is also coming out below the line, but our operating budget is balanced. It is I think, as I said in the spring, the tightest budget that I've had in 10 years here. So it looks a little bit better now than it did in April, but it is still it doesn't have the regular level of conservatism that I like to put in budgets. So we'll be implementing more stringent budgetary controls this year in order to make sure that we do hit our budget. Just some of the highlight revenue assumptions. If you recall, our tax levy went up, our taxes are going up by 5.1%. 5% was the CPI for PTEL purposes, and so that's the increase on existing property. The recapture is taxes that were refunded basically out of the prior year's tax receipts. And so we're getting those, we were able to re-extend those and get those back this year. And I'm assuming a collection rate of 99.5%, which is historically been pretty accurate. State revenue is flat. Our corporate taxes are continuing to go down from the height that they were. There was kind of a peak during the pandemic. They're going back to pre-pandemic levels. And so I'm expecting them to be lower again by 25% this year. And our interest income is still really high. And we should see good interest income this year because we've got a lot of investments currently that are on the books at the high interest rates that will mature over the course of the year. So even if interest rates go down, we've locked in some of those rates. Looking at revenue, our operating revenue is up about 3.5%, 2.7% in total. I just want to point out the transportation fund, the reason that it increased so much is that we lowered our levy in transportation last year to avoid any tax objections. We had, because during the pandemic, we had such low transportation expenditures. Our fund balance to expense ratio got a little out of whack and we were getting some tax objections. So for 1 year, we reduced it, but now we're back to kind of where we need to be to operate. As Dr. Leal said earlier, we are very reliant on local revenue. 95% is local, about 88% of that is property taxes. The other 7% is a mix of the corporate taxes, food service revenue and fees, and then we get a little bit of state and federal revenue also. Looking at our expenditures, we have very large increases in salaries and benefits this year in order to remain competitive. We have a brand new teacher contract, and we also added a new enrichment area. So we have an increase of 3 FTE. As I said, the new teacher contract, and then we had large increases in support staff and administrator salaries, as well as our guest teacher rate increase. This is really related to a lot of the inflation we've been experiencing in the economy recently and wage inflation. So in order to be able to attract and retain talent and subs that we need, guest teachers that we need, and good administrators, we're seeing higher salary increases, and that's really what's driving the tightness of.
Which, by the way, anecdotally, we've hired some really amazing guest teachers in the last couple of weeks, and we've actually had a lot of applicants and been able to.
Actually, Kevin Brennan was telling me earlier, he'd been getting complaints because people would be getting notified of a job, and then they would, by the time they looked to see if they were free, it was gone, and they couldn't do it, so.
It's a good problem to have.
Good problem. We did very well in health insurance. We did make some plan changes again during negotiations, but also our health insurance cooperative had a good year, so we're seeing some relief in health insurance premiums. Our PPO is only up 4%. Our HMO actually went down, and our dental is more or less flat. We had some big contract increases this year as well, again, related to the wage inflation. Our custodial contract was rebid, and due to mostly wages, that is up 18%. Our Olson transportation contract is up 6.5%, where we were able to just barely maintain 10 routes. Some of the routes are very full, and we'll see what happens next year, but we may need to move to 11 routes next year. As Kevin said earlier, we were able to achieve some software savings, so that's been really helpful this year. We also had our computer lease ended, so that was some savings under purchase services. And then Austin, our new director of safety and security, although he's part of half our employee and half District 70's, he's really District 70's employee, and then we're paying District 70 as an independent.
And it's like 60/40, I think, is our agreement, right? 60/40 or 70/30, I can't remember. It's not totally.
But he's not, he's on our books as a purchase service because we're paying District 70 for our portion of his time.
Quick question, is that in one of our upcoming meetings?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's coming,
Okay.
No problem. Special education is always a big budget item. We're able to budget for all of our outplacements. One of the True North contracted teachers that we had was moved to staff, so that's just a shift from purchase services to staffing. And then we have some coaching and speech language that we get from True North, and then they're doing a lot of work on their buildings, and they're spreading out the cost to all the other districts over time, and so we have an $18,000 assessment for their building facilities at True North. Capital spending in Fund 20 is $250,000. That's usually about what we budget for. The middle school air handler project was in Fund 60, so that is separate. That's in our capital projects fund. This year so far, we purchased a new truck, and then we have our new Bell and PA system. And $140,000 of that, mostly the equipment was ordered in was spent in June, so that hit the last fiscal year. And, so 120,000 remaining will hit this fiscal year. We have some of the installation costs for the packable wall surfaces that were put up, and then just some other miscellaneous items this year. The electronic door locks for safety and security were moved to next summer, from this summer, because we prioritize the Bell system on that. We want to be able to communicate to the classrooms.
Did we not use some of that money and didn't we purchase some items for that ahead of time? Or
We did not. I was considering doing that. I got approval to do it, and I never did, just because it wasn't, we were be able to.
And again, that's the electronic door lock system. Our doors all remain locked during the school day and, yeah, I just don't want people to think we're not locking doors.
Sure.
This is to put those locks on the same system as our exterior locks for key management and functionality purposes and lockdown purposes. So just a quick look at our total expenditures. They're going up 6.7%. So last year we did have we've had operating surpluses in the past. We've grown our revenue by 2.7% and our expenditures by 6.7%. So that's kind of eating away some of those surpluses, and that's something that we will not be able to do for, on an ongoing basis, year after year. You can see the salaries are up 9. This is basically what I showed earlier. Benefits, many benefits are proportional to salaries, so those go up with salary increases, but we did see lower inflation in insurance, which is the weighted average, bringing down the weighted average increase. Purchase services, some of those software savings and savings in computer lease costs are lowering that. And then the only thing there, the capital number of minus 30%. Last year, we had a $250,000 budget, but as I said, that Bell system expense ended up hitting last year, and so we went way over budget and capital last year. And this is just by fund. The only thing of note on this page is the transportation. Our special education transportation costs have gone up as we've been required to find new vendors, and some of those vendors are more expensive. And again, the debt service is just a function of the refinancing. Looking at a pie chart of our expenditures, I've included both operating and total, because again, the debt service really distorted how things look otherwise due to the refinancing. Get 75% of all of our expenditures are salaries and benefits. And the next big chunk of purchase services are largely personnel driven. They're like custodial and transportation and safety and security director. And so that leaves only about 5 to 7% for everything else. So we're a very people intensive business. When we experience the wage inflation that we've had, that's been putting a strain on the budget. This is our debt service schedule. This excludes the refunding because I don't really know what the results are yet. And that also is going to make it look really weird. But it will basically look the same because we've not changed the structure of our debt. The yellow bars will be a little bit smaller because we're still saving some interest costs, but otherwise, that's how they will look. Our big bonds that we use to pay off, to build the elementary school will be paid off in 2029. We will see a big fall off in our debt service, and then if we do nothing else, we will be debt free in 2035. The yellow bars are the bonds that we're refunding, and those were the bonds that were issued for the middle school renovation and additions. And then looking at our ending fund balance, despite spending $2 million of fund balance last year on many capital projects, we are still at 36% of operating expenditures, which is well within our board policy of 30 to 50% with a little bit of cushion. So feeling pretty good about that.
That's great.
That's budget.
Is it ever possible, does anybody ever go debt free? Because, I mean, it's a great goal, and I get it, why you wouldn't, because of, like, things come up and you have to plan purchase loans and things like that. But
I'd say for periods of time, but
Oh.
maybe not.
have we ever done? Never, for you. So,
Not in the time that you.
Not since I've been here, and not since they built the
um,
elementary school in 2009. Before that, I'm not sure how much debt they had. Debt is a way to manage your tax rate so that you can do the things you need to do with your buildings and not have big swings. And so we will need as to decide what to do when the debt is paid down, because once your debt rate goes down, then it's very hard to issue more debt, because people will get used to having lower taxes, and
Right.
people don't like to vote for higher taxes, so,
Great.
you know, you wanted, but you want to be able to smooth it out. You want to be able to, you know,
That's fine.
so to give savings, and you don't want to overtax people, but you want to be able to maintain your buildings and not, you know, not dip into operating funds really in order to do that. So I'm thinking there may be some level, small level of debt needed, certainly not the level that we had in the past for building that new building. Our buildings are in great shape. We've got $2.5 million of identified projects, maybe over the next 5 years.
Right.
That we can do out of operations. But I don't see us going debt free for other periods.
Yeah, good conversation though to keep bringing up, because that's gonna be coming in the future.
Like 10 years.
See y'all.
That's what I was trying to get. 7.
Any other questions for Jay?
Still waiting for the lasers. So
Next time.
are they coming?
I
Thank
think
you.
maybe the finance task force can help design some really engaging
Yeah.
budget presentations,
Right.
lasers and
I-
music.
I feel like I remember you did a budget presentation where the, you
I
interviewed
did.
the kids, and
It was
kids,
amazing.
they all thought
It was amazing.
that 90% of the budget was on school supplies.
Yeah, so do we.
Interesting that it's 4%.
We might need to bring back the kid focus budget
Yeah, well,
With lasers.
with lasers and music.
yeah. If nothing else, maybe have somebody else present it.
Yeah.
Maybe a student, maybe someone on the finance.
It's not you, Jay, it's the content.
I'll try to spice up.
All right, but not too much, actually. We really like that it's balanced and that, you know.
Do not know how to stop my screen mirroring, so.
Kevin?
Just click on the blue one.
All right, what about Allerton Hill Communications contract renewal?
Yeah, so really quickly, as you know, last year, we contracted with Allerton Hill Communications to support some of the needs that we had in the district. I just put this together today. A board member asked for a little bit more detail on what they're doing. So this is, this we can put in the packet. It's attached to the other strategic plan presentations. But I'll take it out and do it differently. Just some of the things that they helped us with in their first year. So the development of a community newsletter, they've supported us with designing email templates, all the strategic plan branding and organization of the actual booklets and all of the things that were sent out. They entirely take care of our social media platforms now on Facebook and Instagram. Sorry, I don't use that one. And they've begun a LinkedIn page for us as well, which has helped with recruitment, we think. They helped design our attendance campaign, helped to migrate our website. As you know, we were kind of in a mess last year in Kevin's transition. They helped support that transition. On the Bluff, they wrote our content last year for the On the Bluff after interviewing us and collaboratively figuring out stories. As you know, our community calendar is coming out soon. They designed that. The branding for the Bluffers in Need program, the podcast launch, editing and posting, Lake Bluff recruitment and job postings, as well as the videos, and then some design of like swag, you know, stickers and t-shirts and stuff like that. Ongoing, now that we've gotten some of that infrastructure built, the monthly communication, which now is over on Thrillshare, they support us with story development or interviewing and then, you know, developing the content, doing the graphics for all that. Again, continue to help us with the templates in our communication so that we're consistent. They continue with the social media. They will support with stories based on content that we submit. And then also they help remind parents of holidays and calendar reminders and all those, like the countdown they did this year, you know, those kinds of things. Branding for special events or campaigns. Actually, Allerton Hill has now taken over the On the Bluff newsletter. It's becoming a magazine. And we're gonna do it twice a year as opposed to 3 times a year, I believe. And they are folding in our contribution, which we used to pay extra for, into our contract. So they are separately contracting with the village and the park district.
Is that what's on the bluff? I can't
Yes,
remember.
it's the village and it's like it's
Like
been,
pamphlet.
it's been a pamphlet with only green and black print.
Black,
Yeah.
yeah.
This will be a full color publication from all three of the organizations. We're trying to work with the library, but they're in a transition right now. So I think that will become kind of a bigger thing, but they've designed a beautiful,
Do they do the park district as well?
the park district is on the bluff.
But do they
Not
work?
the
No.
brochure, is that what you're
They
talking?
don't
Yeah,
work now.
Changed
No.
too.
Okay,
I don't think so.
all right.
And then any kind of annual strategic community print communication. This year it's a calendar. We'll see how that's received. That might be a thing we do every year, or we might look at something else. But I do think a print communication in mailboxes at least once a year is important, as the majority of our families do not have students in the school. It's important for us to do that. They continue to support with podcast development. I have currently recorded 3 episodes in season 2, so those will be coming out shortly. And then obviously crisis communication and supporting us when we have weather issues or other crises happening in the district. And then our kind of side of it, we collaborate on the story development with them. We figure out what we want to do in terms of the podcast recording, editing, website posting, and changes to the website. So there's definitely a collaboration between the district and Allerton Hill, but it is nice to have them looking from a broad perspective at what our communication plan is and making sure that we're getting information out in lots of different ways, and then also monitoring the engagement. That's been helpful to me as I think they do it quarterly engagement with Facebook, Instagram, community newsletters, those kinds of things.
That was one of my questions. Can we see what kind of engagement percentages we are getting from all the things that they're doing to see if it is quantitative and
So I think we'll be able to start collecting some of that data. Whether or not the emails, I can't remember, now people can still, they sign up, right? Through the QR code for the community emails, and then, I can't remember now how that
It's probably
Still
now, it's
Yeah.
still active, but.
just okay, so when they post things, that's somebody there, not somebody here.
They will do the posting for us.
So typos and things like that are them.
Typically, and try to stay on top of those.
Okay.
Send Amy an email. She's
Yeah.
really.
No, that's why I don't want to send.
No, you can, we appreciate it when
Send
people.
you on once, 'cause it's-
And we have seen that kind of decrease. I know, to be honest, we're kind of a heavy client, we use a lot of their services. So we actually have 2 people working on our account now for the same price. And it's because we've asked them to do a lot of projects, and they have come through, but it's definitely, we ask for a lot of things. So I think now that we have 2 people, we've seen, actually 3, because we have a separate person doing the social media and then somebody helping with. other
I just,
For sure.
I want to make sure that we were getting a personal,
Oh, no, we meet with them once every 2 weeks, sometimes once a week.
and it's the same person.
It's the same 2 people now, yeah, and then Amy and I meet. I know Kevin has met sometimes, but the nice part is when we kind of develop a story, they will reach out to Jay for information, they'll reach out to the principals for information, so they will coordinate the gathering of the information and the development of the story for us as well.
There's definitely more behind the scenes than there is.
There's actually a lot of communication behind the scenes.
I'm sorry, but Scrooge comes out, the Scrooge comes out of me whenever I hear public relations consultants. Even though my son-in-law is a public relations for a company, and I have to bite my lip, but, I don't know, I've never been big supporter, because I've probably never quite understood the benefits we get out of it. So any way you can, and I appreciate that you're very enthusiastic about it, and it seems like a big support and help for you.
Well, one thing I would say is that, when we talk about community engagement and involvement, getting information out in multiple channels is important. And having a consistent branding is also important, since people get a lot of emails. They see a lot in their feeds for their social media. For them to see quickly that this is the information, and for somebody to help us figure out the right information to go up top, the things that people are most interested in, is helpful for me.
So it would be good to see just how many people are accessing.
Now, they do give us a quarterly engagement report on Facebook and Instagram, so we can see how many people click on it, how many, like, I don't know, there's lots of different metrics that they look at. The other thing that I would say in this climate now, for schools especially, it's important to put money in the bank, so to speak, in terms of positive news, and things that are going well, because if things don't go well, sometimes those go viral very quickly. And if people haven't built up sort of a positive, impression of, and know everything that's going really well, they can automatically sometimes go to, oh, everything is bad, you
That's a
know?
good point.
So just because things happen so quickly, so building up and making, not like building up a story, but making sure people know all the things that are positive that are happening, which actually takes a lot of time. So that if and when things go south, people already know that there's a lot going well, and that they don't automatically jump to the conclusion that everything's terrible, if that makes sense.
And just to, yeah, I don't know if it helps clarify things a little bit, when the four of us were, yes, and Amy were brought on, that was one of the big things we talked about is how to bring the community into some of these amazing things happening in the school that we kind of knew about, but we wanted to get it out to everybody. So this is,
I feel like it was disjointed. So this is very helpful because everything does look the same and you're not sitting in your office constantly typing these things and trying to word them correctly. I'm curious, so they don't run the newsletters from the principals and that new, it's not SMORE, whatever you said was. Yeah, so they don't do that.
Not yet.
Do you have tracking capabilities on Skillshare of how many people engage into those? Because it is a click here to get somewhere to read more.
We have probably a little bit less insight than they do. They have a platform built
Right.
that's running analytics, but we can see how many people open it, how many people click on it, how much time is spent on it. So I get, even the emails I send to our staff, I get pretty good.
That's nice.
It's not that they can't, I actually think we may transition towards that.
Yeah.
And having them kind of help with those communications as well, but we've really, in the last year, they've only been with us a year, and really just focused on strategic plan, district branding, some of those things like Bluffers in Need, you know, the attendance, like getting some of those pieces, like foundational pieces. Especially the website was, I know Kevin did a ton of work on that. They were also instrumental in helping us figure out that thing.
I would say the biggest value that I see in them, because I understand your point, right? And it's a lot of money to spend on something that doesn't seem tangible. I think the biggest value that I see in them is that we do have a really small admin team and they have a lot of work to do. And this outsourcing public relations, communications, all of that frees their time up to do their actual jobs, right? That's where I see the biggest value in it, because we're not a big enough district to have a communications or marketing.
What is your, community, consulting group? Did I say anything about this?
Have a strategic plan.
Your community advisory group?
I don't, like the people that, the community.
Task force?
stakeholders?
Oh, the wellness task force?
The what?
The community wellness task force? I'm not sure which group you're talking.
What group is Ed Kaczynski on?
I'm not sure.
He told me he worked with you.
Well, maybe it's her.
A community advisory?
then the tri-board.
I don't know. You recognize that name? I'm not recognizing the name right now, but
Well, he's a little old. He's older than me. He may be a little confused. Never mind.
Well, even,
It's okay.
but, I mean, are you trying to say, I'm with you where I love to see like the numbers to just make sure it's
Yeah.
like worth their time, our time, and like the money.
I'll bring that.
I'm just a hard sell on it.
I was
Yes.
going to say that I think when we brought them on, that was like my first or second board. And I remember sending you an email about it, because I also, that's your son-in-law, it's like, yeah. But I have seen the value in what they've done. And it would be very helpful, any metrics that they can give us, or if they can, you know, dive deep on it. But I have seen the difference they make, and I also was the curmudgeonly. Yeah, like, not only that.
It's gonna be like, the only other point I would say is, everything we write down and send out is a representation of our district. And everything now goes everywhere. So anything that we write large scale to go out to the entire community could end up anywhere with any kind of tone or spin on it, anywhere.
And from a
And so-
legal liability.
Yeah, just having that extra set of eyes to say, I don't think that's phrased right, or you might wanna consider thinking about this a different way. That's helpful for me to make sure that everything that we send out is representative of what we want out in the world. It's just a very different climate, I think, now than schools had before, and I agree with you, like, I draft all my own communication that comes directly from me, but I do have somebody look at it. Because I wanna make sure that there's nothing in there that I'm saying that is like gonna misrepresent what we're doing. So that's the other benefit I could see, but it's a yearly contract, bringing it to you for reapproval, but we can get out of it at any time within 30 days. Like, if we decide this is not working for us, either party can mutually say this is not working for us. They haven't raised the cost. For comparison's sake, many districts around us have an internal person as well as an external communication consultant. So there are many that have a person in-house and then also have a third party. We only have the one. For the 60,000, I think it would be hard for us to get an expert or somebody that has the experience that I would want for us to use in that position. I think it would be hard to find an individual that could do the amount of work or the breadth of work, like have the expertise in all of the different areas where they can come to the table and say, our social media person's working on this, our print person's working on this, they have like a bunch of people that specialize and then they can be more efficient. Yes, as well. So we're not voting tonight. That's for, next month.
Thank you for the breakdown of everything that was helpful.
Just checking.
Anything else on that? All right, it's time again for public comment. Anybody want to say anything? I take it there's nothing online, Amy. Okay, well then, may I have a motion to adjourn the September 10, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting at 9:07 PM?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned.
Thanks all.